year was 2187. The universe was big, cold, and mostly empty. But it was not quiet. Not anymore. Far away from Earth, in the dark silence of deep space, a fleet of 47 warships moved slowly. They were not lost. They knew exactly where they were going. Their target was a small blue planet near a yellow star, a planet called Earth. Inside the lead ship, a tall alien stood with his arms crossed. His name was Commander Vrax. He was the greatest war commander of the Zenthari Empire. He had destroyed 12 civilizations before this one. 12 planets, 12 species, all gone. He was not nervous. He was never nervous. He looked at the screen showing Earth and smiled slowly. "Primitive," he said quietly. His second in command, General Dra, stepped beside him. "They have no galactic alliances, Commander. No powerful friends. No real army. This will be quick." Vrax nodded. 48 hours. We give them a chance to surrender. Then we take everything around him." His soldiers laughed. They had done this before. This was just another easy mission, or so they thought. Back on Earth, the message arrived at exactly 3:17 a.m. It came on every screen, every phone, every television, every radio, all at the same time. One message in perfect English. "People of Earth, you have 48 hours to surrender your planet to the Zenthari Empire. If you do not surrender, we will destroy you." This is not a warning, this is a fact. Then the message ended, and for a few seconds, the whole world was completely silent. Then everything exploded. People ran into the streets. News channels screamed the story. Governments called emergency meetings. Some people cried. Some people prayed. Some people simply stood still and looked up at the sky. The fear was everywhere. It was in every home, every city, every country. The whole planet felt it. But in a quiet underground room beneath the Pacific Ocean, one woman did not panic. She sat in a black chair in front of a massive screen. She was reading numbers. Her name was Commander Sarah Voss. She was 41 years old, short dark hair, calm brown eyes. She had not slept in 22 hours, but she was not afraid. She was focused. An officer rushed into the room. "Commander, the Zenthari fleet." "It is confirmed. 47 ships, all heavily armed. They are currently passing Jupiter's orbit." Sarah did not look up from her screen. Distance. About 6 hours away at their current speed. Sarah nodded slowly. Then she finally looked up. "Wake up, Dr. Wren. Tell him it is time." Dr. Renoa was already awake. He was always awake. And he was a small man with round glasses and messy black hair. He looked more like a university teacher than the most important scientist on the planet. But he was the man who had spent 18 years building something impossible. Something the world did not know about. Something that was about to change everything. When Sarah walked into his lab, he was already pulling up systems and running final checks. "She is ready," he said before Sarah could speak. "You are sure?" Sarah asked. Wren looked at her over his glasses. "I have checked her 4,000 times. She is ready." Sarah looked at the massive design on the screen. It was a ship, but not like any ship the world had ever seen. It was enormous. It was powerful. It was the result of 18 years of secret building, secret testing, and secret planning. The world governments had funded it quietly behind closed doors. Nobody outside this program knew it existed. They had called it many things during the building process, but its final official name was simple: Titan. Meanwhile, the Zenthari fleet continued moving toward Earth. Commander Vra sat in his command chair, relaxed. He was watching a historical file on Earth. Humans, he had learned, were a young species. They had only been flying in space for about 200 years. They had small ships, basic weapons, simple technology. They had tried to contact the Galactic Council several times over the decades. Each time they were ignored. The Council did not take them seriously. Nobody took them seriously. They are like children. Var said to General Dra, angry, loud, but harmless. Dra nodded. "Their weapons cannot even scratch our shields, Commander. This is truly going to be easy." Fra smiled and leaned back. He thought about what he would take from Earth. The water, the minerals, the land. It would make the Zenthari Empire even stronger. He closed his eyes. He was already planning the celebration after the victory. He did not see what was coming. Nobody did. On Earth, Sarah gave the order. It was a simple order, said in a calm voice. "Begin launch sequence." In a massive hidden dock, deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, systems came alive. Giant engines powered on. Hundreds of engineers ran final checks. Lights turned on across the entire structure. And slowly, from beneath the ocean surface, something began to rise. In the Galactic High Council, 200 alien species were watching Earth's situation on their screens. Some were curious, some were amused. Most were simply waiting to see how quickly the Zenthari would finish. Nobody expected anything interesting. Then one council member noticed something strange on the deep space radar. "What is that?" she whispered. Another council member leaned forward. "It is coming from Earth's ocean. Is it a submarine?" "No, it is much too large for that." The room slowly went quiet as more council members noticed. Everyone was now looking at the same radar signal. Something enormous was rising from Earth's ocean. Then it broke through the surface. Water crashed in every direction like a massive wave, and the Titan rose into the sky. It was unlike anything in the galaxy. The ship was 4 kilometers long. Its hull was dark gray and covered in layers of thick armor. Massive energy cannons lined both sides. Its engines burned bright blue as it pushed up through Earth's atmosphere. It moved slowly at first, like a mountain learning to fly. But then it cleared the clouds and it moved into space. And when it fully appeared on the Zenthari fleet radar, everything changed on Vrax's command ship. An alarm went off. A young soldier stared at his screen with wide eyes. "Commander," the soldier said slowly, "something is coming out of Earth's orbit." Fra did not move at first. "What kind of ship?" The soldier could not answer. He just kept staring at the screen. Fra stood up and walked to the screen himself. He looked at the radar. He looked at the size reading. He looked again. He thought the system had an error. "Run the scan again," he said. The soldier ran it again. The result was the same. The object coming toward them was bigger than his entire fleet combined. Frack stood very still. For the first time in his 300-year life, something cold moved through his chest. He did not have a word for it at first. Then he remembered this was fear. On the Titan's bridge, Sarah stood at the front window. She could see the 47 Zenthari ships ahead, small dots of light in the darkness. "Open communication channel," she said. "Channel open, Commander," an officer replied. Sarah looked at the screen where Vra's face now appeared. He was trying to look calm. He was failing. "Commander Vra," Sarah said, her voice flat and steady. "My name is Sarah Voss. I am the commander of the Earth Defense Force. You sent us a message 6 hours ago. This is our reply." Frack stared at her. Then he looked at the ship behind her through his own cameras. "What is this?" he asked slowly. "Where did you get this technology?" Sarah almost smiled. "We built it." Vra blinked. "That is not possible. Humans do not have this level of technology." "That is what you thought," Sarah said simply. "You ignored us for 200 years. You never checked. You never asked. You just assumed we were weak." She let that sit for a moment. Then she continued. "We want no war, Commander. Turn your fleet around and go home. This does not have to end badly." Vra was quiet for a long time. His generals were whispering behind him. Some were saying, "Retreat." Some were saying it was a trick. Some were saying the ship was not real, just a visual illusion. Fra looked at his own size readings again. He thought about his empire. He thought about his reputation. He had never retreated from anything in his life. And in the end, pride won over logic. "Open fire," he said quietly. 47 ships fired at the same time. The darkness of space filled with bright energy blasts. Hundreds of shots all aimed directly at the Titan. Explosions lit up around the massive ship like a storm of fire. The energy blasts hit again and again and again. For 40 full seconds, the Zenthari fleet fired everything they had. Then they stopped and they waited for the smoke to clear. The Titan was completely fine, not a single scratch. Its shields had absorbed every single shot. The ship floated in space, silent and enormous, and completely untouched. On the Zenthari ships, nobody spoke. Nobody moved. Vra stared at the screen. His mouth was slightly open. Sarah's face reappeared on the communication channel. "Our turn," she said. She looked back at an officer. "Return fire. 10% power only." The officer paused. "Only 10%, Commander. That is what I said. One cannon on the side of the Titan powered up. Just one." A single line of blue-white energy shot through space. It hit the Zenthari fleet, and in 3 seconds, 9 of their 47 ships were gone. Not damaged, gone. The remaining Zenthuri fleet went completely still. No movement, no firing, no communication, just silence. Vra slowly sat down in his command chair. His hands were shaking. His General Drax stood behind him, unable to speak. The pride, the confidence, the easy smiles, all of it was gone. In its place was something the Zenthari Empire had not felt in a very long time. Helplessness across the galaxy, in the Galactic High Council. The room was completely silent. 200 alien species watched the screen. None of them spoke. None of them laughed. Now, in the back of the room, Ambassador Kale stood quietly. He was the only alien who had ever tried to warn the Council about humanity. He had said it many times over the years. Do not underestimate them. Nobody had listened. Now he watched the screen, watching the Zentari fleet sit frozen in front of one human ship, and Kale smiled, not with surprise, with satisfaction. Back on the Titan, Sarah looked at the communication screen. Fra was still on the line. He looked like a different person now. The power was gone from his face. Commander Vrax, Sarah said, her voice still calm, still flat, still completely in control. I am going to ask you one more time. Turn your fleet around. Go home. Tell your empire that Earth is not available. A long silence. Then Vrax slowly nodded. This is not over, he said quietly. No, Sarah agreed. But today it is. The 38 remaining Zenthari ships slowly turned around and they left. No celebration on the Titan. No cheering. No noise. Sarah simply watched them go. Then she turned around and walked back to her chair. Dr. Wren stood nearby watching her. That went well, he said. For now, Sarah replied. She sat down and looked at her screens. They will come back. They will bring more ships. They will tell their empire what happened here today, and then something bigger will come. She paused. We need to be ready. Wren pushed his glasses up and nodded. I already have ideas. Sarah looked out at the stars. The same stars that had ignored Earth for 200 years. The same galaxy that had laughed at humanity, that had called them primitive, weak, and unimportant. She looked at those stars for a long time, and she thought about everything that was coming, because she knew this was not the end. This was only the beginning. They came to take everything from humanity. They had 47 warships, centuries of experience, and complete confidence, but they forgot the one thing that makes humans dangerous. Humans do not give up. They do not sit down. They do not wait to be saved. They build. They plan. They prepare. And when the moment finally comes, they are ready. The Council laughed at humans. Now they couldn't speak. Space was quiet again, but it was a different kind of quiet. Before it was the quiet of something about to happen. Now it was the quiet of something that already had. The kind of quiet that sits in a room after a bomb goes off, heavy, uncomfortable, and full of questions. The 38 remaining Zenthari ships moved slowly away from Earth. They did not fire. They did not turn back. They just moved like wounded animals, walking away from a fight they never expected to lose. Inside those ships, nobody spoke. Soldiers sat at their stations and stared at nothing. Officers looked at their screens but could not focus, because every single one of them was thinking the same thing. What just happened? Inside the Galactic High Council chamber, the silence was even worse. The chamber was massive. It could hold thousands of beings from across the galaxy. Right now, it held exactly 200 representatives from 200 different species, and every single one of them was completely still. The giant screens on the walls were still showing the replay over and over. The Titan rising from the ocean, the Zenthari fleet firing everything. The Titan not moving, not even shaking. And then one shot, just one, 10% power, 9 ships gone. The Council had watched it 5 times already. Nobody had asked to stop the replay. Nobody had said anything at all. Then one Council member, an older alien named Counselor Bre, cleared his throat. Everyone looked at him. He opened his mouth, then closed it, then opened it again. That ship, he finally said. How long have they been building that ship? Nobody answered because nobody knew, and that was the most frightening part. At the back of the chamber, Ambassador Kale stood with his arms crossed. He was a tall alien, thin, with pale blue skin and dark, calm eyes. He had been the Earth ambassador for 31 years. For 31 years, He had sat in this room and listened to other council members make jokes about humans. Too emotional, too violent with each other, too primitive to matter. He had warned them not once, not twice, many times, and every time they had smiled politely and ignored him. Now he stood at the back of the room and said nothing. He just watched their faces, watched the confusion, the shock, the fear, slowly spreading across the room like water, and he let them sit in it. Finally, Counselor Brush turned and found Kale in the crowd. "Ambassador Kale," he said, "you knew about this ship. It was not a question." Kale walked slowly to the front of the chamber. Every eye followed him. He stood in the center of the room and looked around at all 200 faces. "I knew humans were building something," he said calmly. "I did not know the details. I was never invited into their program. They did not trust the council. And honestly, can you blame them?" The room was very quiet. For 200 years, humans asked to join this council. Every time we said no. For 200 years, they sent messages asking for contact. We ignored them. We called them primitive. We called them dangerous to themselves. We laughed at them. He paused. They were not building a ship to attack anyone. They were building a ship because they knew one day someone would come for them. And they were right. Counselor Bree shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "You should have told us," he said. Kyle looked at him. "I did tell you. I told you for 31 years you chose not to listen." The room had no answer for that. Meanwhile, far from the council chamber, Commander Vra sat alone. His fleet was still moving away from Earth. His generals had tried to speak with him twice. Both times he had sent them away. He sat in his private room in the dark and stared at the wall. In his long life, Vra had fought hundreds of battles. He had walked onto conquered planets and watched their leaders kneel. He had never lost, not once until today. And the worst part was not the loss itself. The worst part was how fast it happened. They had fired everything, and the human ship had not even moved. Not a shake, not a crack, not a scratch. It had just sat there like a mountain, like it was not even trying. And then one shot, one small shot, at 10% power, and 9 of his ships were simply erased. Brax closed his eyes. He thought about what his emperor would say when he returned. He thought about the 300 soldiers on those 9 ships. He thought about the smile on the human commander's face. That calm, flat, completely unbothered face, Sarah Voss. He said the name slowly in his head. He had looked her up in Earth's public records during the journey to Earth. She was a soldier since age 19. She had fought in 3 Earth conflicts. She was known for being quiet, precise, and completely without panic. She had never lost a battle either. Until today, they had something in common. Now they did not. Back on the Titan, the bridge was busy but calm. Officers ran system checks. Engineers repaired minor damage from the Zenthari energy hits. The shields had held perfectly, but the energy absorption had put stress on 3 lower sections. Dr. Wren was already in the lower decks personally checking everything. Sarah sat in her command chair and read reports. An officer approached her carefully. "Commander, we are receiving a communication request." "From VR," Sarah said without looking up. "No, Commander," the officer said. "From the Galactic High Council." Sarah stopped reading. She looked up slowly. "The Council?" "Yes, Commander. They are requesting to speak with the commander of the vessel." Sarah was quiet for a moment. Then something very small moved at the corner of her mouth. Not quite a smile, but close. "Put them through." The screen filled with the face of Counselor Brush. Behind him, Sarah could see the massive council chamber and the many faces inside it, all of them looking at her. Brr spoke carefully. "Commander Voss, I am Counselor Bray of the Galactic High Council. We wanted to make contact and express our concern," Sarah said quietly. Brush blinked. "Yes, our concern. The Zenthari attack on your planet was something you watched and did nothing about," Sarah said. Her voice was not angry. It was simply factual. Bree opened his mouth, closed it, tried again. "We understand that Earth has felt unsupported by the galactic community in the past." "Unsupported?" Sarah repeated the word slowly like she was tasting it. "Yes, that is one word for it." Behind Brush, several council members shifted uncomfortably. Sarah looked directly into the camera. "Counselor, 200 years ago, Earth sent its first message to this council. We asked to be heard. We asked to be included. We asked for contact. Every message was ignored. Every request was rejected. Every attempt was met with silence. She leaned forward slightly. Today, a fleet of 47 warships came to destroy our planet. Where was the Council then? Bray had no answer. We were not aware of the Zentari's plans. You were aware, said a new voice. Everyone turned. Ambassador Kale had stepped forward in the chamber. Intelligence reports about Zentari movement toward Earth were filed 8 months ago. 2 council members received those reports. They were marked low priority. The chamber erupted in noise. Council members arguing, denying, pointing at each other. Sarah watched it all on her screen. She watched the most powerful political body in the galaxy fall apart in real time because of a planet they had ignored for 2 centuries. She watched for a while. Then she spoke, and her voice cut through all the noise. Counselor Brush. The room slowly went quiet again. Everyone looked at the screen at the human woman sitting calmly on her ship. We do not need the Council's apology right now. We do not need speeches. We need the Council to understand one thing. She looked directly at the camera. Earth is not asking to join your Council anymore. Earth is informing you that we are here. We have always been here and we are not going anywhere. Silence. Complete total silence in the Council chamber. Then Kale, standing at the side of the room, began to clap slowly at first. Then a few others joined. Then more. Not everyone, but enough. Sarah ended the communication. She sat back in her chair and let out a slow breath. Dr. Ran appeared from the back of the bridge, wiping his hands on a cloth. How did it go? He asked. About how I expected, Sarah said. They were scared, terrified. Ren sat down on a nearby chair and pushed his glasses up. Good, he said simply. Sarah looked at him. You think that is good? I think scared people pay attention, Ren said. And paying attention is a start. Sarah considered that. Then she nodded slowly. 3 hours later, something unexpected happened. A small single ship appeared on the Titan's radar. It was not Zenthari. It was not from Earth. An officer spoke carefully. Commander, we have a ship approaching. It is broadcasting a peaceful signal. It is a Gaim. It is a Zenthari command vessel. Sarah stood up. Frax. Yes, Commander. He is alone. No weapons armed. He is requesting permission to board. The bridge was very quiet. Everyone looked at Sarah. She thought for exactly 4 seconds. Let him in. Commander Vrax walked through the Titan's main corridor with slow, careful steps. 2 armed human soldiers walked beside him. He had agreed to leave all weapons on his own ship. He was completely unarmed, which was something he had not been in over 200 years. But it was not the lack of weapons that made him uncomfortable. It was the ship itself. From the outside, the Titan was intimidating. From the inside, it was something else entirely. The corridors were wide and clean. The systems were advanced far beyond anything in the Zenthari fleet. He passed rooms full of engineers working quietly, rooms full of screens showing data he could not even read. He passed a large window that looked into a massive engine room. The engines alone were bigger than most ships in his fleet. He stopped walking for a moment and just looked. One of the soldiers beside him spoke. Keep moving, please. Fra kept moving. Sarah was waiting for him in a plain meeting room. 2 chairs, 1 table, nothing else. She was standing when he entered. They looked at each other for a moment. 2 commanders, one who had just won, one who had just lost. Fra sat down first. Sarah sat across from him. You came alone, she said. Yes, why? Brax was quiet for a moment. Because what I want to say is not something I want my soldiers to hear. Sarah waited. Brax looked at the table, then back at her. How long? He asked. How long? What? How long have you been building the ship? 18 years, Sarah said. Fra closed his eyes briefly. 18 years. And no one knew. No one outside our program. How many people worked on it? Thousands. And none of them talked. None of them. Vra shook his head slowly. That, he said quietly, is more impressive than the ship itself. Sarah said nothing. Vra looked at her directly. I came here because I need to tell you something. Not as enemies, as I do not know what we are, but I need you to hear this. Say it. Brax leaned forward. The Zenthari Empire is not going to accept this. My Emperor does not accept losing. He will send more ships, bigger ships, more powerful ships. He will not stop. I know, Sarah said. You know? Yes, I planned for it. Fra stared at her. You are not afraid. Of course, I am afraid, Sarah said. But fear does not change what needs to be done. Brack sat back. He looked at her for a long time, and in that look, there was something new. Not anger, not pride, something that looked almost like respect. Then the alarm went off. Not a small alarm, a full red alert. The whole ship shook slightly as systems powered up. Sarah was on her feet immediately. She touched her earpiece. The voice of her officer came through fast and urgent. Commander, we have a new contact on deep radar. It is not Zithari. It is not from any known registry. It is Commander. It is big, very big, and it is coming fast. Sarah's eyes moved to Vrax. He was already standing. His face had changed. What is it? She asked him, because he recognized something. She could see it in his eyes. Vra said one word very quietly. Impossible. What is impossible? Sarah said. Talk to me. Brax looked at her, and for the second time in one day, she saw fear on his face. But this time it was different. This was not the fear of losing a battle. This was something older, something deeper. There are stories, he said slowly. Old stories, very old, about a species that existed before all of us, before the Zinthari, before the Council, before any civilization we know of. He paused. We always thought they were just stories. Sarah stared at him. Vra, yes. Are they just stories? He looked at the wall as if he could see through it, out into space, at whatever was coming. No, he said quietly. I do not think they are. Sarah did not waste another second. She walked out of the meeting room fast. Vra followed without being asked. They walked onto the bridge together. Every officer turned to look. Nobody said anything about the Zithari commander standing next to Sarah, because everyone was looking at the screen, at the radar, at the shapes moving toward them. They were not 47 ships. They were not even 200 ships. The radar showed thousands, thousands of ships moving in perfect silence. No communication signals, no warnings, no demands, just movement toward them. Doctor, Ren stood at his station, his face completely white behind his glasses. Sarah walked to him. Tell me, she said. Ren looked at her. Commander, these ships, their design, their energy signature, their materials, none of it matches anything in our database. Nothing in the Zithari database either. I already checked. He swallowed. These ships are old. Unbelievably old. Older than any technology we have ever seen. Older than any species we know about. Sarah looked at the radar. Thousands of ships coming fast. She felt it then. Not panic, not fear. Something steady and cold that settled in her chest like a stone. She had trained for the Zinthari. She had not trained for this. Nobody had. But she was still standing on the bridge of the most powerful ship humanity had ever built, and she was still the commander. She turned to face her crew. Every face was looking at her, waiting. She took one breath. All hands, she said clearly. Battle stations. This is not a drill. Frack stood behind her. He looked at the human crew moving fast and efficiently across the bridge. No screaming, no panic, no confusion, just action. He had come here today, expecting to find a species that got lucky with one good ship. Instead, he found something that made his chest feel strange. Something he had felt very few times in his very long life. He found himself wanting them to win. Outside the Titan, in the deep darkness of space, the ancient ships came closer. Silent, massive, patient. They had been waiting a very long time, and now they were here. The galaxy had spent 200 years deciding what humanity was. Primitive, weak, unimportant, not worth the attention. But the galaxy had made one very simple mistake. It had confused silence with emptiness. Humans were never empty. They were full of plans, full of patience, full of something that the galaxy was only now beginning to understand. And now, with something ancient and unknown coming toward them, humanity would need every bit of it. The radar screen did not lie. Thousands of ships moving in perfect formation. No sound, no signal, no warning, just movement. Cold, steady, and unstoppable. The kind of movement that does not rush because it has never needed to. Sarah stood at the front of the Titan's bridge and looked at the screen. She counted the signals. Then she stopped counting because the number kept growing. More ships were appearing from deep space, coming out of the darkness like shadows stepping into light. 1 by 1, then 10 by 10, then hundreds at a time. Dr. Wren stood beside her, his tablet in his hands, his face still pale. "They are not slowing down," he said quietly. "I can see that," Sarah replied. "They are also not targeting us specifically," Wren continued. "Their path. If I calculated correctly, they are heading toward the inner solar system, toward Earth, toward Mars, toward everything." Sarah absorbed that they are not coming for the Titan. "No," Wren said. "They are coming for everything we have." Fra was still on the bridge. He had not moved since the alarm went off. He stood behind the crew and watched the screen with dark, unreadable eyes. Sarah turned to look at him. "You recognize this?" she said. "I saw your face when the signal appeared. You know what this is?" Fra was quiet for a moment. Then he walked slowly toward the screen. He looked at the ship designs on the radar, long, angular, with no visible engines or weapon systems from the outside. He had seen drawings like this before, old drawings in very old Zathari texts, books that most of his people considered mythology. "In Zindthari history," he said slowly, "there are records going back almost 4,000 years. Most of our early history is stories, legends, things passed down before we had proper record-keeping." He pointed at the screen. "In those old stories, there is mention of a species called the Veil. They existed long before us, long before the Council, long before any civilization that is alive today. According to the stories, they seeded life across the galaxy. Some historians believe they created the conditions for species like mine and yours to evolve." The bridge was very quiet. Every officer was listening. "According to the stories," Vra continued, "the Veil disappeared approximately 3,000 years ago. Nobody knew where they went. Nobody knew why. Some believe they died out. Some believe they moved beyond our galaxy. Most believe they were simply gone." He turned and looked at Sarah. "Apparently they were not gone." Sarah held his gaze. "Why are they coming back now?" Vra looked at the screen again. "In the old stories," he said, "the Vial had one rule above all others. One thing they could not tolerate." "What?" Sarah asked. "War," Var said simply. "Large-scale conflict. The kind that damages planets. The kind that wipes out species. According to the stories, the last time the Vial appeared was 3,000 years ago. There was a war between two ancient civilizations. Both were advanced. Both were powerful. The war lasted 200 years and destroyed 4 planets completely." He paused. The Veil appeared and ended it. They did not negotiate. They did not warn. They simply removed both civilizations from existence. The silence on the bridge was heavy, and then they disappeared again. Bra finished. Sarah looked at the radar. Thousands of ships coming steadily closer. "They saw our battle," she said. "Yes, they think we are starting another large war. That would be my guess." Sarah turned back to the screen. Her mind was moving fast, calculating, considering, planning. Then she said something that nobody on the bridge expected. "Then we have to show them we are not." Dr. Wren looked up from his tablet. "How exactly do we show an ancient and possibly all-powerful species that we are not at war, when 20 minutes ago we absolutely were at war?" "We were defending ourselves," Sarah said. "They may not know the difference. Then we make them know," Sarah said. She turned to her communications officer. "Open every channel we have, every frequency, every band in every language in our database, Zenthari language included." The officer moved quickly. "Done, Commander. All channels open." Sarah stepped forward. "This is Commander Sarah Voss of Earth. We are transmitting this message to the incoming fleet. We do not know your name, we do not know your intentions, but we ask for communication. The conflict, you may have observed, was not an act of aggression from Earth. We were attacked. We defended ourselves. The conflict is over. We are asking for dialogue. We are asking you to speak with us before taking any action." She paused. "We are listening." She stepped back. The bridge waited. 1 second, 10 seconds, 30 seconds, a full minute, nothing. Then, "Doctor." Wren's tablet made a sound. He looked at it and his eyes went wide. "Commander," he said carefully. They responded. On screen. "It is not a visual signal," Wren said slowly. It is directly in our computer system. They did not send a transmission. They put the message directly into our system, through our shields, through our firewalls, through everything." Sarah stared at him. "They are inside our computer system." "Just the message," Wren said. Nothing else is affected. Everything still works. They just placed a message inside our system like putting a note through a closed door. What does the message say? Ren looked at his tablet. He read slowly. One representative unarmed outside the ship. You have 10 minutes. The bridge erupted. Officers talking at once. Commander, you cannot go outside the ship. We do not know what outside means. This could be a trap. We have no idea what they are capable of. Sarah raised one hand. Silence. Get me a suit, she said. Fra stepped forward. I will go with you. Sarah looked at him. The message said one representative. I know, Frack said. But I am not asking to go outside. I am asking to stand at the airlock, so that when you come back, there is someone here who understands what you might have just seen. Sarah looked at him for a long moment. Something had changed between them in the last hour. Not friendship exactly, but something close to understanding. She nodded. Airlock, she said. 7 minutes later, Sarah Voss floated in space outside the Titan. She had done spacewalks before, many times, but this was different. She floated in the dark and looked at the ancient fleet ahead of her. Up close, they were even more impressive. The ships were dark, almost black, and seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. They had no visible windows, no visible engines, no visible weapons. They were smooth and angular, and completely silent. Sarah floated and waited. Then one ship moved, just one. It separated from the fleet and came toward her. It stopped about 50 meters away. A section of the hull opened and something came out. It was tall, very tall, maybe 3 meters. It floated in space without a suit, without any visible breathing equipment, without any protection at all. Its body was thin and angular. Its skin, or what looked like skin, was dark and slightly luminescent, like the surface of deep water at night. It had no face that Sarah could immediately identify, no eyes she could see, no mouth, no nose, just a smooth, dark surface that somehow felt like it was looking at her. Sarah held very still. Then the being raised one long arm and somehow, without any sound in the vacuum of space, without any radio signal, without any technology Sarah could identify, a voice appeared directly in her head. Not loud, not frightening, calm, clean, and very clear. You are the commander. It was not a question. Yes, Sarah said. You initiated the broadcast. Yes. Why? Sarah took a breath inside her helmet. Because I did not want you to make a decision without information. You saw a battle, but you did not see the full picture. I wanted to give you the full picture. A pause. Speak. So Sarah spoke. She told them everything. 200 years of being ignored by the galactic community. 200 years of building quietly and preparing patiently. The Zenther attack, the defense. She kept it simple and direct. No emotion, no drama, just facts. When she finished, the being was still for a long time. You built your weapon for defense, it said. Yes, you did not use full power. No, I used 10%. I wanted to stop the attack, not destroy the attackers. Another pause longer this time. The Zenthari commander. He is on your ship. Yes, he came willingly. Yes. Why do you allow this? Sarah thought for a moment. Because the war is over. Keeping him as an enemy helps no one. Understanding each other might help everyone. The being was very still. Sarah floated in the silence of space and waited. Then the voice came again. You are different from the Zenthari. Sarah asked from most, the being said. Most species that reach your level of power use it immediately and completely. You did not. This is unusual. We had a long time to think about what we wanted to be, Sarah said. When no one is watching you, you have to decide for yourself what kind of people you are. Another long silence. Then something happened that Sarah did not expect. The being moved closer, just slightly, and the voice in her head changed. Not the words, but the feeling behind them. Something that felt almost warm. We will observe, the being said. We will not act, but we will watch. If the conflict resumes at scale, we will return. I understand, Sarah said. One more thing. Yes, the Zenthari Empire will not accept this result. Their emperor is already preparing a larger force. What you faced today was a small fleet. What is coming next will be much larger. Sarah felt the cold stone settle deeper in her chest. How much larger? Enough that your ship alone will not be sufficient. Sarah was quiet. Will you help us? The being paused. That is not our way. We do not fight wars for others. We only stop wars that threaten existence itself. Then what do you suggest? The being raised its arm again, and this time it pointed. Not at Earth, not at the Titan, at the Zenther fleet behind Sarah. You already have the beginning of an answer, it said. Then it turned and moved back toward its ship. The hull closed behind it, and the ancient fleet slowly, silently turned and disappeared back into the deep dark of space, as if they had never been there at all. Sarah floated alone for a moment. She looked at the stars. Then she turned and looked back at the Titan, the biggest ship humanity had ever built, and she thought about what the being had said. You already have the beginning of an answer. She looked at the Zenthari fleet sitting at a distance, still there, still watching. She thought about Vrax, standing at the airlock, waiting for her, a commander who had come to destroy Earth, who was now standing inside its greatest ship, watching, learning, and somewhere in the last few hours, changing. She started moving back toward the Titan. Her mind was already working. When she came back through the airlock, Vrax was there. He looked at her face and said nothing. He had learned in the last few hours that Sarah Voss's face told you a great deal if you knew how to read it. Right now, it told him she had a plan. She pulled off her helmet and looked at him directly. The veil told me your emperor is sending a larger fleet. Bra did not look surprised. Yes, he will. He has no choice. If he accepts this loss without response, other systems will see weakness. He cannot allow that. How much time do we have? Brax thought. 2 months, maybe 3. He will need time to assemble and travel. Sarah nodded slowly. Then we have 2 months. For what? Brax asked. Sarah looked at him. To build something your emperor was not expecting. And what is that? Sarah turned and started walking toward the bridge. An alliance, she said. Fra stood for a moment. He thought about his empire, his emperor, his career, his people. Then he thought about those 9 ships gone in 1 second. At 10% power, he thought about the vial. Thousands of ships, ancient beyond understanding, watching everything. He thought about this small human woman who had walked outside into open space to talk to an unknown ancient being without hesitation. He thought about all the things he had believed before today, that humans were weak, primitive, not worth attention. He thought about how completely and utterly wrong he had been. Then he started walking after her. Who exactly? He said, catching up. Do you plan to include in this alliance? Everyone, Sarah said. The council will not agree easily. No, Sarah agreed. Many species will be afraid. Yes, some will refuse completely. Probably. Brax walked beside her in silence for a moment. Then he said something he had never said in his 300 years. Not to an enemy. Not to someone who had just defeated him completely. How can I help? Sarah glanced at him. That small movement at the corner of her mouth again. Not quite a smile, but very close. Start by calling your fleet, she said. Tell them to hold position. Tell them the situation has changed. And then we contact the Galactic High Council, Sarah said. And this time, we are not asking for permission. In the council chamber, Councillor Brush was still trying to organize a response to everything that had happened. The room was loud, chaotic, full of arguing voices. Then every screen in the chamber went blank, and one face appeared, Sarah Voss, and standing directly beside her, Commander Vrax of the Zenthuri Empire. The council chamber went completely silent. Brush stared at the screen. Counselor, Sarah said calmly, we need to talk, all of us. The Zenther Empire has a larger fleet coming. We have approximately 2 months. We are proposing a joint defense coalition. Every species, every fleet, coordinated and commanded together. She paused. You ignored Earth for 200 years. That is done. What happens in the next 2 months will determine whether any of us are here in 2 years. She looked directly into the camera. We are not asking for your help. We are asking you to help yourselves. There is a difference. Bear looked at Vra on the screen and the Zathari. They agree to this. Fra stepped forward slightly. I cannot speak for my emperor, he said. But I can tell you what I have seen today. I came here to conquer a primitive planet. Instead, I found something I did not know existed. He glanced at Sarah. I found a species that is stronger than us. Not because of their ship, but because of how they think. I would rather stand beside them than against them. And your emperor? Braked. My emperor, Brax said quietly, has not seen what I have seen. He straightened yet. The council chamber was silent for a long time. Then Kale, standing at the side of the room, spoke. "I have been the Earth ambassador for 31 years, he said. "I have been telling this council that humanity was worth paying attention to. Nobody listened." He looked around the room. "Are we finally ready to listen?" One by one, slowly council members began to nod. Not all of them, but enough. Outside the Titan, space was quiet again. The Zenthari fleet held position. The ancient ships were gone. The stars were still. But the quiet now felt different. Not the quiet of something ending. The quiet of something beginning. Something that nobody had planned. Something that had grown out of a battle nobody wanted, out of fear and loss. And two commanders sitting across a table from each other with nothing left to hide. Something that might just be strong enough for what was coming. There is a kind of strength that only appears when everything seems lost. It does not come from weapons or ships or power. It comes from the moment when two enemies look at each other and realize that the real threat is something neither of them can face alone. Humanity had spent 200 years preparing for the wrong enemy. But in doing so, they had become exactly what the galaxy needed. Not a weapon, not a conqueror, a foundation. Something solid that others could stand on when the ground disappeared beneath their feet. 2 months passed faster than anyone expected. They always do when you are preparing for something you are afraid of. Every day was full of work, planning, arguments, and difficult decisions. Every night was full of silence and the kind of thinking that keeps people awake. Sarah Voss slept 4 hours a night, sometimes 3. She did not complain. Nobody on the Titan complained because everyone knew what was coming. And everyone knew that the time they had was not enough. It was never going to be enough. But it was what they had. The coalition had come together slowly, not easily, not happily, but it had come together. 47 species had agreed to contribute ships and soldiers to the Joint Defense Force. Some contributed large fleets. Some contributed only a handful of ships. Some contributed technology and supplies instead of soldiers. But they came. One by one they came. And every time a new fleet arrived and took position near Earth, Sarah stood on the bridge of the Titan and watched them appear on the radar. She never celebrated, she just counted and planned. Brax had done something extraordinary. He had returned to the Zenthari Empire alone, without knowing if he would be welcomed or arrested. He walked into his Emperor's throne room and told the truth. Everything. What the Titan had done to his fleet, what the Vile were, what was coming, if the Empire continued its aggression. The Emperor had been furious, then silent, then furious again. It had taken 11 days of difficult conversations, but in the end, 3 things had changed the Emperor's mind. The recording of the Titan destroying 9 ships with 1 shot at 10% power, the sensor data confirming the Veil's fleet of thousands, and Vex himself standing straight and calm and saying clearly, "We cannot win this alone. No one can." The Emperor had agreed to a ceasefire. He had not agreed to join the coalition, but a ceasefire was enough for now. It meant the large fleet was not coming. Not yet. It bought more time. But time ran out anyway, because the threat that arrived was not the Zenthari Emperor. It was something else, something none of them had planned for. It started with a signal not from the Zenthari, not from deep space. From inside the solar system, 3 ships appeared near Saturn with no warning. No radar signal before arrival, no transmission. They simply appeared as if they had stepped through a door. They were ancient design Veil, but wrong. Something about them was different from the ship Sarah had seen 2 months ago. The shape was similar, but the energy signature was darker, heavier, like the same design, but built with a different purpose. Dr. Wren stared at his screens for 10 full minutes before he spoke. "Commander," he said carefully, "these are not the same Veil ships we encountered before." Sarah looked at him. "Explain the Veil we met." Their energy was neutral, almost passive. These ships, their energy signature is active, charged, like a weapon that is already powered and aimed. Sarah looked at the 3 ships on screen. "Are they from the same species? Same design, same material, same age?" Wren said. "But, Commander, I think these are not the Veil who came to observe us. I think these are the ones who came to make a decision." Sarah understood immediately. "They are not watchers." "No," Wren said quietly. "I think these are the ones who act." Then the transmission came. Not through any system directly in every mind on every ship in the entire coalition simultaneously. The same clean, calm voice Sarah had heard in space 2 months ago. But this time it was not just her. Every commander, every soldier, every crew member of every species heard it at exactly the same moment. The observation period is complete. Our conclusion: the conflict between your species was not resolved. It was paused. The Zenthuri Empire has not withdrawn its intent. It is only delayed. This pattern is known to us. Delay followed by larger conflict. The last time this pattern was allowed to continue, 4 planets were lost. We will not allow that again. Sarah was on her feet. Open a channel, she said fast. Commander, they are not using any standard channel. Then broadcast open same as before everything we have. The communications officer moved immediately. Broadcasting. Sarah stepped forward. This is Commander Sarah Voss. I spoke with one of your people 2 months ago. I am asking you to speak with me again before you take any action. What you are describing, the pattern you see, I understand why it concerns you, but the situation has changed. Please look at what is around us before you decide. Silence. 10 seconds. 20. Sarah held her breath. Then the voice came back. We are looking. We see 47 species standing together in one place. The voice said, This is not common. No, Sarah said. It is not. This was your doing. It was everyone's doing, Sarah said. I asked. They chose. I cannot take credit for other people's courage. A pause. The Zentari Empire. They are not here. No, but they agreed to a ceasefire. That is a step. It is a small step, but it is real. Small steps have failed before. Yes, Sarah said. They have, but sometimes they have not. You cannot know which this is until you let it continue. A longer pause. Sarah stood completely still around her. The bridge was silent. Not one person moved. Not one person breathed too loud. What do you want from us? The voice finally asked. Sarah had thought about this answer for 2 months. Not consciously, but somewhere in the back of her mind. In those 3 and 4 hour nights, some part of her had been preparing for exactly this question. Time, she said. Give us time. Not forever. Not unconditional. Set a period. Watch us. If we slide back into the pattern you are worried about, you still have the option to act. But give us the chance to prove the pattern has changed. The silence this time was the longest. Sarah counted in her head. She got to 47 before the voice returned. 1 generation, it said. By the measure of the longest-lived species currently in your coalition, you have that long to demonstrate permanent change. Sarah calculated quickly. The longest-lived species in the coalition lived approximately 400 years. Agreed, she said immediately. If the pattern returns before that time ends, then you act, Sarah said. I understand. 1 final pause. You are an unusual species. You said that before. It remains true. And then the 3 ships disappeared as quietly as they had come, gone. For a moment, the Titan's bridge was completely still. Then someone started breathing again. Then someone else. Then the sound of 200 people exhaling at once filled the room like a wave. An officer laughed suddenly, then covered his mouth. Someone at the back of the bridge started clapping. Then more joined. Not loud celebration, just the sound of people who had been holding something very heavy for a very long time. Finally setting it down, Sarah did not clap. She stood at the front of the bridge and looked out at the stars. She felt Dr. Wren appear beside her. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, 400 years is a long time. Yes. Do you think we can do it? Sarah thought about that honestly. She thought about humanity, the arguments, the conflicts, the wars they had fought among themselves, the stubbornness, the pride, the anger that lived in human hearts. She thought about all of it, and then she thought about the coalition outside, 47 species who had never stood together before, who had come because one small blue planet had asked them to. She thought about Vra walking into his emperor's throne room alone. She thought about Kale standing in the council chamber for 31 years, saying the same thing over and over. She thought about Dr. Wren in his lab for 18 years building something impossible. She thought about all the quiet, patient, stubborn things that people do when they refuse to give up. I think we have a chance, she said finally. That is not exactly a confident answer. No, Sarah agreed. But it is an honest one. Wren pushed his glasses up and nodded. I will take honest over confident. So will I. 3 days later, something happened that Sarah had not expected. A Zathari ship arrived. Not a warship, a small diplomatic vessel. It requested permission to dock with the Titan. Sarah gave it, and Vra walked back through the airlock. He looked different than the last time. Still tall, still composed, still the face of someone used to commanding. But something in the way he carried himself had shifted. Like a very heavy coat he had been wearing his whole life had been removed. He walked onto the bridge and looked at Sarah. "My emperor has a proposal," he said. "I am listening." "He will not join the coalition," Brack said. "Not yet. He is not ready for that. His pride will not allow it immediately." But Sarah said, because there was clearly a but he will open formal communication with the Galactic Council for the first time in 60 years. He will attend a summit. He will talk. Sarah looked at him. "That is more than I expected." "It is more than I expected too," Bra said honestly. "What changed his mind?" Rex was quiet for a moment. "I told him about the veil," he said. "Not just the facts. I told him what it felt like to stand in the shadow of something that old and that powerful, and realize that everything the Empire had built, every conquest, every victory, none of it meant anything to them. That we were to them as small as we thought humans were to us." He paused. "My emperor is a proud man, but he is not a stupid one." Sarah nodded slowly. "A summit is a start. Yes. Will you be there?" Bra almost smiled. "Someone has to make sure he behaves." The summit was held 1 month later. Not on any planet, not in the council chamber on the Titan. Sarah's idea, neutral ground. A ship that belonged to no political body, no empire, no council. Just a ship built by humans in secret over 18 years. A ship that had become, without anyone planning it, the most important meeting place in the galaxy. 47 species sent representatives. The Zentari Emperor came personally. He was tall, even by Zentari standards, with sharp eyes and a long military uniform, covered in decorations from 200 years of conquest. He walked through the Titan's corridor and said nothing, but his eyes moved everywhere, taking in the technology, the size, the impossible engineering of it all. When he reached the main meeting hall, he stopped because on the walls Sarah had placed screens. And on the screens were images, not of battles, not of weapons, images of Earth, cities, oceans, forests, mountains, children playing, old people sitting in the sun, ordinary moments from an ordinary planet. The Emperor stood and looked at them for a long time. Nobody spoke. Then he turned to Sarah. "Why these images?" he said. "Because Sarah said before any of us talk about politics or alliances or defense strategies, I wanted everyone in this room to remember what we are actually protecting." The Emperor looked at the images again. "This is what Earth looks like. Yes, it is very small." "All planets look small from space," Sarah said. "That does not mean they do not matter." The Emperor was quiet. Then he sat down and the summit began. It lasted 4 days. There were arguments, many arguments. There were moments when 3 or 4 species were all talking at once, and nobody was listening. There were moments when the Emperor stood up and looked like he was about to leave. There were moments when the council representative said things that made Kale close his eyes and press his fingers to his head in quiet frustration. But nobody left. Every time it got close to breaking apart, something pulled it back. Sometimes it was Sarah speaking, sometimes it was Kale, sometimes it was Rack saying something sharp and honest that cut through the noise. Sometimes it was simply the fact that everyone in the room was tired, and tired people sometimes find it easier to agree than to keep fighting. On the 4th day, a document was signed. It was not a perfect document. It had compromises that nobody was completely happy with. It had vague language in sections where specific language was impossible. It had promises that would be difficult to keep and conditions that would be hard to verify. But it was real. It existed. The Galactic Cooperative Defense and Communication Accord, signed by 47 species, and the Zenthari Emperor, the first document of its kind in the history of the galaxy. After the signing, the representatives began to leave, ships undocking one by one, heading back to their home systems. The summit was over. The Titan was quiet again. Sarah stood at the main window on the bridge. The stars outside were the same stars that had always been there, the same stars that had looked down at Earth for billions of years, the same stars that had watched humanity grow from nothing to something, the same stars that had watched them get ignored, struggle, build, prepare, and finally stand up. Dr. Wren came and stood beside her. He had a cup of coffee. He offered her one. She took it. They stood together in silence for a while. Then Wren said, "What happens now?" Sarah looked out at the stars. The galaxy that had ignored them, that had laughed at them, that had sent 47 warships to end them, that had been saved from a far worse conflict, partly because of what humanity had built in secret and in silence. She thought about 400 years, one generation, all the work still ahead, all the arguments still to come, all the moments that would be hard and uncertain and frightening. She thought about all of it, and she felt something settle in her chest, not the cold, heavy stone of before, something warmer, something that felt a great deal like purpose. "Now," she said quietly, "we do the harder work." "Harder than building the Titan," Wren said. "Much harder," Sarah said. "Building the Titan was engineering. What comes next is something else." "What?" Sarah looked out at the galaxy. "Trust," she said. "We have to build trust between species who have been afraid of each other for centuries, between empires that have only ever known conquest, between people who are very different and need to find a reason to choose cooperation over conflict." She paused. "It will take longer than 18 years. It will take the full 400, Wren said. "Probably that is a long time." "Yes, we will not live to see the end of it." "No," Sarah said, "but we will live to see the beginning, and the beginning is the most important part." Wren sipped his coffee. "You know," he said after a moment, "when I started building this ship 18 years ago, I thought the hardest part would be the engineering, and now I think the hardest part was always going to be this." He said, "The part after. The part where you have the power and you have to decide what to do with it." Sarah nodded. "That is always the hardest part." They stood in silence again. Outside the window, one last ship was leaving, the Zathari Emperor's diplomatic vessel. It moved slowly away from the Titan, growing smaller against the stars. Then it made the jump to faster travel and disappeared, just like that, gone, the emperor of the most powerful empire in the known galaxy, flying home from a summit held on a human ship with a signed document in his possession that his own historians would probably argue about for centuries. Sarah watched the empty space where his ship had been, and she let herself feel it just for a moment. The full weight of everything that had happened, everything that had changed, everything that was still fragile and uncertain and incomplete. And underneath all of it, something she had not let herself feel until now, something that felt like hope. Behind her, the bridge was filling up again. Officers returning to stations, systems being checked, the ordinary work of running an extraordinary ship. Someone called out a systems report. Someone else answered. The Titan hummed around her, alive and powerful and real. Sarah finished her coffee, set the cup down, and turned back to face her crew, her people, the people who had built this ship, sailed it, fought in it, and were still standing in it. She looked at them, every face. Then she sat down in her command chair. "All right," she said, "what is next?" And the answer came back from every station at once. Work, always more work. And Sarah Voss, commander of the Titan, defender of Earth, unlikely architect of the first galactic accord in history, smiled. A real smile this time, not the small corner movement, a full, genuine smile, because work meant forward, and forward was exactly where she wanted to go. They were never written into the galactic story. No chapter, no mention, no page. They were the species nobody watched, nobody expected, and nobody prepared for. They grew in silence. They built in secret. They waited with a patience that most species never learn. And when the moment came, not just to fight, but to lead, not just to survive, but to build something worth surviving for, they were ready. The galaxy had spent 200 years deciding what humanity was. In the end, humanity decided for themselves. And the galaxy, all of it, every species, every empire, every ancient watching presence in the deep dark of space, felt it. They were never the weakest species in the galaxy. They were simply the ones still becoming. And when they finally arrived, they brought everyone else with